Welcome to A State of Mind, the podcast that brings together consciousness, meditation, mindfulness, psychology, psychedelics, and so much more in pursuit of this mystery we call life. This is Julian Royce. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to help create this podcast, and I cannot believe we are on episode number 56. Wow, such a rich journey of learning, definitely with its shares of ups and downs, hopefully more ups. And I realize it's been a few weeks since my last episode. Part of the reason for this is I just moved to a new place. I went from living in this large community house that I helped to create to getting my own space. So now it's just me and my dog Sailor. And it's, moving is tough. It's been challenging. Everything felt so upended, just a week ago. And I'm finally starting to feel more settled. So really looking forward to the next chapter of A State of Mind podcast here. Today's episode is with Alec Brogan. It is really one of my favorite conversations thus far on the podcast. Alec is a doctor of chiropractic, and he really opened up my eyes to understanding the art of chiropractic in a deeper way. He has a more mystical understanding of how this all can work and help heal people, not just heal the aches and pains in your body, but also help you to heal deeply held emotional patterns and ancestral healing, which is something we get to talk about in this podcast that was really fascinating. In addition to chiropractic and yoga, Alec has extensively studied astrology and human design, and he calls his own work, which brings all this together, the geometry of grace. We talk about yoga, we talk about meditation and alignment, and we talk about the meaning of health and what healing can mean, and he has some really good, interesting perspectives on healing. And we discussed the idea of this term self-regulation. This gets used a lot these days in psychotherapy, and it actually has a profound connection with the art of meditation. When we can allow our nervous system to deeply relax, which requires a real sense of safety as well as embodiment. And when we can really relax in this way and self-regulate like this while maintaining our awareness, there is tremendous potential for deep healing again, and also for deep insight into the true nature of things. So we talk about that here in this conversation, and we talk about men's work and the importance of creating or co-creating a positive, healthy vision of masculinity, especially today. This is something I feel really passionate about, and it's something I'm going to discuss more on the podcast in the future. Alex shares how connecting with the mythological level of our being can provide an avenue for this, and it can also help us connect with a deeper sense of purpose in our life. So if you are someone who is struggling with a sense of purpose and meaning, connecting with actually our mythology can be an avenue to help you there. This was a really fun, engaging conversation. Without further ado, I bring you Alec Brogan. And I'm here today with Alec Brogan. Alec, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's good to connect with you again, because we met several years ago at Naropa University.
Several years ago.
I remember you had the big sitar. Is that right?
Yes.
You're studying Indian music.
That was another life.
Another lifetime ago.
Yeah, I haven't played the sitar for a long time now, but it was my life back then.
Well, and how would you like to introduce yourself now? I know you're working with as a chiropractor.
Yeah, totally. So I am a chiropractor. If people are familiar with network chiropractic, it's a very gentle form of chiropractic, and in my experience, deeply profound. It helped me in my own life with a lot of neurological things that were present. And yeah, it's incredibly beautiful. So I'd say that's the fulcrum of what I do. However, I do a lot of my own work within that. So a lot of cranial.
Cranial sacral.
Yeah, more of like a biodynamic cranial sacral. I'm fascinated by osteopathic cranial sacral too.
So do you want to, and you got a doctorate? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. To become a chiropractor, you're a doctor.
You have to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And how do you talk about the network chiropractor? Like what?
Yeah, like what is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, let's dive in. So right now, your whole system, from the energy of your body to the autonomic nervous system, let's just say your spinal cord. The spinal cord actually holds tension, right? Just like a muscle, just like any tissue, right?
Like actual...
The cord itself, absolutely.
So what is the spinal cord? Is it's nerves?
Yeah, totally.
Like within the bones?
It exists within the spinal canal. That's a big topic. But yeah, you want to consider what the meninges and that's a whole big topic. But what I will say is fascinating is that the tissue of the spinal cord is the same tissue as the brain. So in a way, you can almost call it the brainal cord.
I haven't heard it put quite that way.
Right. But what
the brainal cord.
The brainal cord. Huh. But what network does is it takes into consideration that our experiences influence the pattern that our nervous system is tuned to. So, you come in and we assess what's happening in your nervous system, and we also assess where the ease is. We call this a spinal gateway. And we make a very specific touch on the spine. And from that place of ease, the body actually regulates itself and goes into a deeply healing space. And yeah, here's something to think about. Let's say a boat is floating in a dock, and you run up to it and you kick it. What happens? You go flying, right?
Your foot's going to hurt.
Yeah. What if you lean on it? It moves.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times when we're very specific with a more gentle force, we can actually go deeper and create a more profound effect. So while network takes a lot of time and self-development to attune to that level of perception with the body, it's worth it, because with that specific gentle force, the whole life can change within one touch. It's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and I know for sure that everything is connected, and that the mind-body connection is incredible, and it's mysterious, and we don't, we can't, no one really, I don't think anyone can really explain that fully.
I would agree.
But for sure, if you can shift your posture, you can shift your attitude, you can shift your mind.
Totally.
Yeah. And they influence each other,
Yeah.
If you're depressed, maybe that changes your posture, the way you hold your body. If you change your body, maybe that changes your depression. So.
Well, let's consider this too. I mean, there are some aspects that we have control over, right? However, as you know through your training as a psychotherapist and someone that works with somatic psychotherapy, there are experiences that we haven't integrated.
Right.
And those situations or those predicaments, those energies live in our bodies beyond the mind.
Absolutely.
They actually become subconscious. So while we can change our posture, that doesn't actually address these deeper patterns that have gone to the back of our mind. Our spine, right, is the back of the mind, right? Yeah. So, but really, it's like our spine, it's where all the shit goes. Excuse me, I hope it's okay I say that on the podcast.
It's getting stored in the nervous system.
Absolutely, in all the tissues. Let's say that you have a confrontation with someone and you can't fully experience that. Well, the body's so intelligent that it stores that experience until we have enough energy to actually assimilate it into wisdom. That's what network does. That's what the work I do is.
Beautiful.
Is I allow the system to regulate enough to experience wisdom in the body, right? To experience and process situations even from our childhood, even embryologically, that we can reclaim and use all the energy that we can to live our life.
Unleashing a lot of energy when you do that kind of work.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah. That was a good description of somatic therapy, of somatic meditation.
Vitalism.
They're all very related.
Yes. Absolutely. Vitalism.
Vitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say more about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So what we can also talk about is salutogenesis and pathogenesis. Pathogenesis we see in allopathic medicine. Oh, this is the pathology. We're going to do something to correct it. We're going to get rid of the illness. Salutogenesis focuses on the health. We say, wow, how brilliant the system is. How beautiful is life. We follow the thread of life and watch the intelligence of the system of life heal itself.
Right.
We trust in the intrinsic healing nature of
with
life. Right.
Yeah.
That's inherent within living organisms.
I love that.
Personally think that the human body is a living organism and quite intelligent. So I trust that. I'm not looking at what's wrong when I work with people. I'm looking at what's beautiful and right. And I witness nature heal itself through that human body.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's well said.
Thanks.
And I have a similar approach with therapy. I think like the mind can heal itself.
Beautiful.
Seeing that potential within everyone, even if they don't see it. And helping someone get out of the victim role.
Totally.
Is actually a big part of therapy, a big part of the work I do.
Which liberates the energy in the system to self-regulate. Right?
Yeah.
When we aren't identified with a smaller sense, the psyche can get so tuned into that victim. But once we liberate, even on a psychic level, that energy, all of a sudden, there's more energy to self-regulate.
Right.
Psychologically, physiologically, energetically. It's all energy and self-regulation. In my perspective, with geometry.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
I
another.
think that the term self-regulation is so big and important.
Totally.
And I think a lot of people, especially if you're suffering a lot or if you're, you don't realize the meaning of that.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Because we kind of
experience real well-being in your system. You might not even know it's possible.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm curious. So are you bringing up the point of almost, it's like how contrast clarifies, how sometimes when people lose their well-being or health, when they regain it, there's this profound reverence for the ability of the system to self-regulate.
Yeah.
It's almost like those of us that are blessed with illness are, when we heal, while we become this beacon of knowledge that life knows how to heal. What a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Not everybody
and then
gets the gift
you appreciate
of
it more having had the
exactly
dis-ease.
Yeah, contrast clarifies.
Yeah. I guess my point too is just that in our world today, if you grew up eating processed foods and watching TV and you go to a school where you're forced to sit in an uncomfortable one of those chairs where the desks are attached to it and you don't have good, the best role models in your life or people around you. It's like you could live your whole life without having experienced this deeper well-being that's within you.
Oh yeah.
And you feel bliss in moments maybe of sex or drugs or ecstasy at a concert, and that's beautiful. But I think what you're speaking to is if we can really balance and really self-regulate on a deep level, there's that well of well-being.
Oh, beautifully put. Absolutely.
A lot of us don't even know that's possible.
Yes.
Like people I see in my practice with therapy, it's like I think we all have some taste of it as a child.
Yeah, I would agree.
You're free and you're energized, and
and something needs to be noted here that this is really the beginning of the mystical process, and that's a bit of a statement. But the window into the mystical life, the mystical process, is actually beginning to trust life beyond the identity. Trusting that there's this movement, there's this river flowing that exists before and after we leave this body and come into this body. So once we gain this relationship, and this is what I focus on in my office. My office is run a little different than most.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, I went to Naropa. I have a fairly mystical background. So for me, when the person comes into relationship with nature through their body, that's the window into a mystical life. Because now we explore something far beyond our identity. Now we witness that we're being breathed. Breathing is happening, but what is it within us that desires that breath? What is that rhythm actually entrained to? Well, these larger biological rhythms, and what are those connected to? These larger planetary universal cycles? Wow. All of a sudden, healing becomes a mystical path. Yes. And learning to be in relationship with the innate forces of life is the window into the mystical. From my perspective, that's why I became a chiropractor. I wanted to go be a monk in India. That's all I wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
And then life happened, and my mom probably wouldn't have liked that very much. So I said I'll become a chiropractor and I'll sneak in some mysticism here and there when I can.
Yeah, but it's so clear that this is a part of your path, your practice. You're not separating your spiritual path from your
No, I can't do that.
work.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, it feels so refreshing to hear you talk about the body in this way. That's the window into the mysticism.
Yeah. I mean, that's really where life begins, because I feel that, when we walk around thinking, I'm Julian and I'm Alec, and it's deeply separate. There's suffering inherent within that. It's actually not true. It's fundamentally not true. We're the same being on a very deep level, and so... Yeah, there's, on a deep healing level, we want to nip that in the bud, and we want to realize that health is actually transpersonal. Another statement, right? Kind of intense, but it is. I mean, health is this organic rhythm that we have the blessing to tap into, but it's this transpersonal beingness, a rhythm in all of life that we can entrain to.
Yeah. So obviously your study of yoga has deeply influenced the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, and I mean,
when did this idea come to do chiropractor? Because when I was a kid and I heard about a chiropractor, I thought of some boring guy. I wasn't thinking about yoga and
Yeah. Like I said, the way I do things is a little different, but actually, here's something interesting. In 1895, a man named D.D. Palmer received chiropractic in a seance.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was a spiritualist.
That's amazing.
And a being named Jim Atkinson, a disembodied being, was said to come to him and give him chiropractic. Now, sorry if this is getting a little far off for people. I don't know, who your audience is, but
totally welcome here.
Okay, great. But the truth is, and what I'm really saying is that chiropractic in and of itself is a mystical science, and art and philosophy. All of vitalism is. Again, the healing process itself is deeply mystical. We're going beyond the identity and trusting in these larger forces. So for me, honestly, I would say it started when I started practicing yoga.
Oh, wow.
I met Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev when I was 18 years old and received initiation into Kriya Yoga through a practice called the Shambhavi Mahamudra with him.
Where did you meet him?
I met him at his ashram in Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
And I been very blessed. I played the sitar for him at different times. So we were, personally interacting.
Personal connection.
Definitely, yeah, which was a blessing, because now, you go and there's 10,000 people in the space. I was able to have lunch with him many times, play music for him.
You say his name again?
Sadhguru. Well, people know him as Sadhguru. He has a big gray beard.
Yeah, I think
people probably know
pictures,
But Jaggi Vasudev, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. Nice. And when he gave me those Kriya practices, I would sit in my room for up to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And I would witness my system regulate itself. And I would go into these profound states of mystical awareness because my body would regulate. Well, the human being is naturally geared towards self-knowing, right? And which some would call the process of enlightenment. So when my system would regulate beyond the need for survival, well, where would that energy go? Well, I was sitting. My physiology was balanced. All of a sudden, all my life energies went towards the knowing of myself and a higher nature of reality. And so then I was blessed with getting really sick. And I didn't really know what to do. And I tried everything. And one day I went and saw a man that just poked me. And I thought, this is ridiculous. But I kept going.
So what kind of sickness?
This was network,
Oh, okay.
Well, sorry, I'll finish and then I'll... Yeah. And then I kept going, and within about a month and a half, I was better. And I tried everything.
And so this was the thing that helped you?
This was the thing that helped me the most. And so I decided to devote my life to it. Yeah. That's making a long story short. I hiked the Appalachian Trail when I was 18, so I probably got Lyme. I had some pretty severe digestive things, neurological stuff. Yeah, it took me a long time, but it was a blessing. I mean, my journey of healing has been a deep one. Not an easy one, but deeply meaningful for me.
Well, I love learning more about the history of chiropractic. Am I saying that word right?
Chiropractic.
Yeah, chiropractic.
Yeah.
Because, it makes so much sense to me. Alignment in the spine. I mean, anyone who goes to a basic meditation class, we learn about upright and relaxed.
Yes.
And how simple and yet challenging.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, for sure. And I will say once again, however, you could tell someone to sit up straight, and that's great. However, when you were 11, right, if there was some profound trauma that influenced your physiology and your nervous system, and that's never been processed, well, that is actually having an influence on your posture, on your autonomic regulation, everything.
Even if you're not consciously aware of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
So you can sit up straight all you want, but I mean, going through a process where you're going and actually healing these deep aspects of your physiology, your psyche, your nervous system, the energetic system. I mean, these are profound things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's happening when we aren't addressing those things. So that's the care that I do. I want to address those deeper, even all the way down to embryological, patterns, that some things happen in utero that we need to address.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Got a little cat.
We have a little kitty. And a dog.
And it's cool to hear about this person receiving chiropractic from kind of vision.
Yes.
I mean, as someone, I have an undergrad degree in religious studies and a master's in Buddhist studies. And so like all these world religions, there's these, even what we think of as very mainstream, well-established religions, oftentimes there's this download that happens from this revelation. If you look at the Buddhist scriptures, there's thousands of them, literally, that masters received. And they said, this isn't my personal, thoughts. This is actually the word of a Buddha or a deity.
Absolutely.
Obviously in yoga, there's lots of that.
Absolutely.
We have all the Christian saints and the Muslim saints.
Yes.
I mean, it goes on and on. So.
Yeah. And, I think that our cultural narrative is profoundly limiting in the Western world. We think that that's somehow far out, or out of reach for someone within our everyday life and culture. But we're always communing with life. I mean, why is it so crazy to some of us that revelation can happen when it's been happening for as long as we know humanity has existed, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, in a certain way, nothing more human.
Totally.
It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, we're communing with.
Same thing with these transpersonal experiences, spiritual experiences.
Yes, exactly.
The same thing with getting this journey from like dis-ease to finding well-being. And
Yes.
That's like the human
dis-ease
experience.
to ease. Absolutely. Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of thinking about how like when I was a kid, I grew up eating a lot of, just junk food and all this stuff. And I think about the TV and the, and I had a pretty loving family. So I'm not, I'm not someone who's coming from a ton of abuse, but just when I started to become more health conscious, which was a part of my meditation practice and journey, because like becoming more aware of my body and the food I'm taking in, the water I'm drinking, and then the information diet. Yeah, it's totally. It's just been a long process of kind of detox. Now I feel like I'm in a more stable, grounded place, and I have definitely more vitality and health than I did 10 years ago. Yeah, that's 15 years ago. I absolutely, I feel wholeheartedly feel the same. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, how profound, even to share this. I mean, most of the people listening to this probably have this awareness already. But, some people come into a chiropractic office and they think that they're just coming in for back pain. And maybe they are. But the gift is, as a chiropractor that's holding a wider paradigm, is that we share that intrinsically. When someone comes in to see me, if they come in and say, well, my back hurts, I meet them there. But I'm actually holding an invitation for a larger paradigm, for them to witness themselves and experience life through that window. Where all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe there's a reason that my back is hurting, and they connect it to something that's happened, thread it back to the history of their life, and like heal a relationship with their mother, maybe. Then all of a sudden we're engaged in lineage level healing, right? And maybe they get into family constellation work. I mean, who knows where it goes? But it all starts from someone tripping and hurting their back. And then all of a sudden, wow, here we are in a contemplative paradigm. So and you're holding the space for that. If they bring that up, you're going to meet them there.
I mean, how can I help it but to meet people in my own paradigm, right? But that's just, and that's the dedication that I have to myself. It's I'm always looking to deepen my understanding of life, my own body, so that I can hold that space for those that come and see me. That's the dedication that I have in my own life. Is I'm most people that know me, if you're watching this, you can probably attest to it. I'm fiercely dedicated to my own health, my own well-being, and really living in the highest integrity that I can to hold that space.
To walk the walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your life, seeing the chiropractor was a game changer.
Yes,
Is that something you've continued to do over the years?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an enormous part of my life. It allows me to do the work that I do. Yeah, and I just love it. I mean, for me, it's the best show in town. Is the healing process, and it extends beyond the body at this point for me. You know,
right? Yeah, you're mentioning lineage, like ancestors.
It's all there.
Astrology.
I mean, everything is written in this body. Everything is written in this body. Our whole lineage. I mean, I've never met my great-great-great-grandfather, yet his nose is sitting right here on my face.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's all here.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many directions we could go with this. So like, just on the level of DNA, we get DNA from our ancestors, from our grandparents, from our parents, and the ways that it's expressed. You know, the ways the genes
epigenome.
So it's and then our microbiome from our mother, like it's so deep.
It's incredibly deep. It's incredibly deep.
But it's so complex and so beautiful and so overwhelming to think about all these levels and connections, and it really makes me appreciate the teachings of karma, because like when we look at the historical Buddha, just to use, because I'm familiar with the Buddhist tradition, use that example. When he became fully enlightened, his body changed. That's right there in the teachings, and like so there's these marks of the Buddha, the length of his fingers and toes are all perfectly proportional. And so it's, partly mythological, but I think it's also speaking to what you're talking about, where if we do become attuned to that level, to the cosmos, to universal reality, then that shifts our physiology.
Beautifully put. In my perspective, this physical world is not primary. It's secondary, if not tertiary. What's primary is the subtle world, right? So when something shifts in our subtle body, immediately the physical form shifts. I mean, I've witnessed it, frankly, with every visit I have almost in the office. These profound shifts in the subtle body, and the person gets up and their face is different. Their body looks different. Their whole system is shifted, right? And I mean, if you saw the way I work, I mean, it's subtle, but there's such profound presence in that subtle work that the body can regulate so deeply. When we put in these huge thrusts, which some chiropractors do, and blessings on that's however people want to work, but a lot of chiropractors will put these enormous forces into the body. It liberates a ton of energy. That's great. But it's not as specific. It's broad. When we get very specific, we're actually in communion with the subtle pranas, the pranas of life, the chi. We're in symbiosis with that when we can be so subtle. The most profound work actually happens in awareness. No physical force. There's force beyond touch. When I'm with someone, sometimes in a deep cranial space, just my awareness will have an impact on that system. Just the shift in awareness. And thank God for my meditation training, because that's what allows me to hold that space. So for me, it makes sense. The way it all has happened, from retrospect, I say, oh, that makes sense now. Why I went to Naropa, why I met Sadhguru, all these things, you know. But when it was happening, I didn't have a clue.
Well, it's great that you've gotten to this point where you look back at your life and you're like, oh, that makes sense. That feels good. And there's a gratitude for even the difficulty.
Profound gratitude for the difficulty. The wounds seem to be where the light comes in.
Yeah. It's a famous saying. The cracks are how the light gets in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. There's Leonard Cohen.
Oh, yeah. He's a good one.
Definitely.
Yeah, this idea that the wound, connects us actually with this vulnerability, right?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The wounds become our window into mastery.
Take a leap here in our conversation. I think
a
figure like Donald Trump.
Wow, we're really taking a leap.
That's powerful, or whatever. However you think about him.
Sure.
I think the reaction against him, and maybe also the reaction for him, that a lot of people feel is, I see him as someone who's not willing to, get in touch with his own wound, right? And there's a strength in that. It can seem kind of invincible because he can't be wounded, no matter what you throw at him. and yet you lose some humanity and vulnerability. And
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, there's a spectrum of the life experience that that diminishes when we become so focused on a certain facet of our beingness. The psyche becomes really dogmatic and narrow, right? And so, you know, we see a big, strong, thick tree, right?
Yeah.
How strong. But then the wind blows a little too strong, and what happens? It shatters, breaks in half. Well, what happens with the willow tree? That same wind comes, and because how gentle it is, it just moves right with the wind, right? So we see these strong psyches. Well, they're strong until they're not, and then they break. But we see these more adaptive, and maybe we witness them as less strong, but yet they're so much more adaptive that there's more sustainability.
That's a good example. Yeah.
You wanted to ask me about the men's work.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to go there, we can also, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can go. I mean, I incorporate a lot of different esoteric systems. As you know, I do the work called the Geometry of Grace, which uses the human design and astrology. I use that with all of my patients.
Oh, really?
Which I call practice members. I mean,
so like, you want to share a little bit about that process?
Sure. That's there's a lot to say there, but for me, meaning and our story has so much to do with the sustainability and the depth of our healing. When we know ourselves on a deeper mythic, even transpersonal level, well, all of a sudden, there's space for us to heal beyond where that the pathology actually took root, right? If we go throughout our day and we're working in an office and we wake up and we identify with, you know, Joe Adams, who's working in the office. Yeah. And you know, if your name is Joe Adams, you know, sorry, but
it's a cool name.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool name. But you know, Joe Adams is going to the office every day. He identifies with that, and then one day Joe Adams gets sick. You know, maybe he gets bit by a tick, and contracts Lyme. And you know, Joe Adams goes through this whole process and eventually gets to a place where he begins to question the meaning of his life. And that illness takes him into a total, you know, reinvention of the psyche. And he begins to study myth. And he realizes, wow, I'm connected. My life has a relationship with these mythic tales, these ancient stories. My life is actually woven from this. Yeah. Right? I've been born, I will die, but these stories are ancient. And they're actually reflected in my own life. He looks at different things in his life. And all of a sudden, he seems to have this larger paradigm. And he feels more connected to the meaning of life. You know what happens? Way more energy is potentially there for his healing. And so we nip that in the bud right away. And when people start care in my office, we explore the transpersonal, the story. And that anchors them into this.
It's like the story you're living.
Absolutely. We're all mythic. We are mythic.
We are mythic.
So we get in touch with that as we heal, while we have this larger container to heal into. Our healing becomes more sustainable. Beautiful. So that's how I use astrology, the human design, is to tap people into this ancient mythic dynamism that we all have.
Yeah, it's such a big topic. I mean,
it's huge.
The popularity of all the Marvel movies and superhero movies are directly speaking to that we can identify with these bigger than life characters, and we can move through the. And when they're saving the world, like we do that in our own life, because we all have our own world that we
Joseph Campbell's work, right? The hero's journey. Yeah. And we all have our mythic tale.
Yeah, we all have our mythic tale.
And what's the role of our healing within that? It's, wow, you know, it's a deep question.
Totally.
But that brings up the mythic man.
Yeah,
that's the men's work.
Well, and to tie it back to the Donald Trump thing.
Sure.
I felt a little. It's tricky to talk about, and people are so passionate about it.
Yeah.
But part of how I see it is, you know, the myth, the archetype of this strong male leader, and people who are against him want to tear him down or destroy him. But what we actually need as a culture, if we want to heal and evolve, is like, how can we tap in with that essential goodness or health that is present even there?
Absolutely.
Rather than try to cut off, which would be cutting off a part of ourselves.
Right? Beautifully put. That healing does not happen from a divisive perspective. It just doesn't. The body heals, as I was saying earlier, when I'm looking at the body, I'm not looking at I'm not looking for a pathology. I'm honoring the brilliance, the wholeness of the system. It's the same thing with this. Psychological healing, Donald Trump healing, whatever. We don't heal from being divisive and separate, from having a separatist perspective.
Yeah.
Healing and holism, to become whole, wholeness. To heal, right? Yeah. That doesn't happen from cutting off a part of ourselves, like you so beautifully put. Yeah. We have to find that inherent goodness that exists within all life. From that place, the system self-regulates. Mm-hmm.
And so you're tying this into this men's work. This
yeah.
I don't know. When I think about that, I think about finding a more positive vision of masculinity.
I love it.
That it doesn't have to go against the critique of the patriarchy or the critique of like the downsides of masculinity, but actually take those in and
transcend and include.
Transcend and include, yeah.
Absolutely.
You take in the criticism, you look at it, and but like what we're saying, you don't, all men are evil or something, right? That's not gonna...
Yeah, and I will say, help. That's something that I had to sit with in my own life. It's like, I've been blessed to have some really amazing men and masculine figures in my life. And I've also been blessed to not have some because, again, contrast clarifies. So in my own life, I have had some not so great masculine figures that I have had the blessing of having enough awareness to sit with that, to witness how I want to show up. And the contrast of that has actually been profound for me. And a lot of the ways that I work with men comes from feeling so inspired to carry a torch of, what I find to be honorable masculine qualities. Instead of, I won't even say instead of, protecting life, being a steward of life. It's like to guard the sacred trust of all that is. To me, that's divine masculinity. Totally. And then we're not talking about gender. It's just these energies that exist. I honor whatever the gender, however we want. But when we look at the divine expression of masculinity, we're talking about the protection of life, of our families, of what we find to be
like that protector
true.
Quality.
Yeah, and there are so many things, but that's part of the work that I'm doing with the Mythic Man, and it's connecting men to their mythic qualities. What's that transpersonal thread that exists within you as a man?
It's so needed in the world today.
Totally.
I'm familiar with the kind of 4 archetypes of the masculinity that have been talked about. The king archetype. You're probably familiar with this. The magician.
No, please, though. Yeah. Please continue,
The magician. What is it? King, magician, lover.
Yep, the lover. Yeah. And is the third...
And warrior.
Yeah, and the warrior. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Which is interesting because in the system that I use the chart, the astrology chart, and we use the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th house. And so they're what I call the 4 fulcrums of the chart. And the 1st house is self, right? The relationship with body, mind, our beingness. The 4th house is our relationship to our ancestry, our lineage, our home. The 7th house is our relationship with our relations. And the 10th house is who we are meant to be in the world. And so in the program with the Mythic Man, we go through these. Each man takes a look, gets intimate with their own chart, and looks at their own mythology, and their path through these 4 directions. So it's connected in a way.
It's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be in August.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, mid to late August, so it should start. Yeah.
And is that going to be online?
It'll be online.
Great.
Yeah, totally.
Powerful.
Yeah, that allows men to join from wherever they are. Because I work with people in a lot of different places through my readings. My office, obviously, everyone's here in Boulder. But the readings, the last reading I gave was to someone in Ireland. Oh, wow. And then the reading before that was someone in Brussels.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then Belgium and all, yeah.
And when you say reading, you're like astrological...
Yeah, the work is called The Geometry of Grace, and I use the human design with Eastern and Western astrology. There's a synthesis there that is called The Geometry of Grace. Yeah, and I do that work with people all over the world. Yeah. Yeah.
So you studied that kind of separately from chiropractic?
Yeah, somehow. I've been studying that for about 10 years. Okay. I started those studies at Europa, and I actually kept them pretty alive during chiropractic school. It's one of the things that helped me get through was finding just so much passion in studying these more esoteric systems. That's my heart. So
So
while I was studying biochemistry, I'd study a little bit of biochem, and whatever else, biomechanics, and then I'd go and study my Jyotish, or my human design, study the hexagrams, kept a good balance.
Yeah. I guess I'll ask, maybe this is a dumb question, but
No.
when you look at someone's chart, you're looking at when they were born, like where they were born.
Yes.
Is there any other information that you need to know, or is that basically
when they were born, like the date, what time they were born,
Right,
and
the time.
where, and that gives us everything that we need to know.
That's the part that's so amazing and hard for me to. I've been skeptical about that.
Sure.
In the past, but
and rightfully so. Skepticism is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of kind of junk astrology out there. You
I
open up the
could
newspaper
not agree more. And honestly, that's one of my deepest passions is to make sure that people have access to deep, genuine astrology and human design, because I cannot tell you the profound influence that it's had on my life and the people that I work with. Absolutely profound. Looking at systems like from the Vedic systems of what are called the dashas, the chapters of someone's life. Someone will go through these dates and it's like, oh my God, that's when my dog died and I went into this whole spiritual crisis and that was that exact date. And then we look deeper and it just profound meaning.
Wow.
Profound meaning is derived from these systems. Now, probably a whole podcast we can go into on why that works, the ancient perspective of what the planets are doing, and we can do that if you'd like. Your skepticism probably deserves that level of discussion.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, and I would like to get into that.
Yes,
I mean,
we can.
And this is something that you would see as being cross-cultural. Like, it wouldn't matter if someone's born in China or if they're born in England. Or
Absolutely not. However, what's beautiful is that the archetypal landscape is malleable, right? The 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, those considerations, well, if someone's from China and they want to explore a different archetypal, a different pantheon, right? Of
different mythology.
Exactly. Then great. Yeah. But the structure is the same. Look at Joseph Campbell's work. I mean, he went around all these, and I'm not exalting Joseph. I mean, he's wonderful, but I'm not saying he's found the golden ticket. But his work is profound, and that's his work. The structure of the archetypal landscape.
Totally. I had an experience. It's about 2 years ago. I went to study this particular text with a Tibetan Lama, who's also a Tibetan medical doctor, Dr. Nida Chinangsang. He's an amazing teacher, and he, in this 12th century Tibetan text, which was written in Tibet by this, talking about revelation, it's kind of like one of those things by a great master. It lays out the astrological signs, and they're exactly the same as the Western zodiac signs. It even has the same same names. Yeah, like Scorpio.
It depends. When was it? When was this written?
It was written in 13th century Tibet, I think. Like the 1200s.
Yes, that would make sense then.
So that blew my mind. I had no idea that
cross-cultural
connection was there.
So this goes deep.
All right, take me there.
Well, I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, like deep. But there was a lot of cross-cultural communication happening.
It's like the Silk Road.
Thousands of years. Yeah, and I mean, even with the you see Greek words. That are what I believe is called transliterated. I don't know the exact word, but basically, you see like kentron is a Greek word that means angle. Well, in the Vedic system, it's called kendra. But that's not a Sanskrit word.
The Greek word.
Right, and vice versa. I'm not saying it started in Greece, and there's a whole debate about that. I'm not taking sides right now on that. Again, this goes deep. But you can see that there is cross-communication. To look at where it starts, in India, it's said that the rishis brought this into the written language because we were moving into a different cycle of time. We're moving into a different yuga. The
yugas.
Right. Yeah. So when the Kali Yuga comes, all of a sudden they need to write the Vedas. Before they were all spoken, pure memory. Right, and so these rishis, these beautiful teachers, these beings, start writing down, and then people say, "Well, that's where Jyotish comes from." Right? It's a limb of the Vedas, but then there are Greek people, people on the Greek side that say no, it started in Greece, and the Greek people and the Greece influenced the Indian, the Vedic practice, and there's a massive argument, frankly, about it.
Interesting.
Which, again, we probably need more time.
Yeah, we have to do.
But, yeah.
Well, I guess while I'm thinking about it, this number 12 months, 12 hours, 24 hours in a day, but 12 hours in the day, 12 hours in the night. Do you have any insight into that? Because that also seems in ancient India, China, Tibet, obviously in Europe.
Absolutely.
Why?
So when you take a look at the way that the days line up and the hours line up, there actually is a structure to it. And I learned this through studying Jyotish. I had the blessing of having a teacher that really beautifully laid out some pretty deep things. So there is a structure from that perspective, but also I was listening to a video recently by a man that I've never studied with, but his name's Rick Levine. Okay. And he was talking about how it's not so much that there are 12 signs out there that interface with the ecliptic. Roughly, that is why we use that number. But you'll hear sometimes people say, well, what about the 13th sign? Have you ever heard of this? Well, there's a 13th sign.
When you say sign, you mean stars?
Like you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, right? All the signs, the 12 signs. Well, here's the thing. People try to use that as an argument around astrology. What Rick beautifully was saying in this video is that it's not so much that there are 12 signs out there, but there's this sacred number of 12 in here. And that we are actually understanding ourselves through the projection of this chart, of this symbol, this mandala that we're using.
Oh, nice.
So that's another perspective.
I like that.
And I like it too, but it's a more modern perspective, I believe. And it's a very wide field, the study of astrology. There are people who study a modern system, and there are people who study a traditional ancient system. Really, the two paradigms conflict in some ways. Views on karma, destiny, fate, the fixedness, and the lack of free will, compared to the more New Age perspective that everything is up to us in the way that we write our reality. Well, I tend to fall in between somewhere,
That's a big question.
And that's why I say, I mean, it's a huge conversation, and there needs to be a lot of foundational understanding before we actually speak to it. As most things that are very deep do. Someone probably couldn't come into one of your master's degree discussions on Tibetan Buddhism without an understanding of some context of the history and things like that. It's the same thing when we start to talk about astrology. Totally. We have to have some foundational concepts before we go ahead and talk about these massive things. Yeah, totally. Or else we get in trouble with trouble happens. Conflation and things. So
totally, I appreciate that. Well, maybe a conversation for another podcast. It's fascinating to think about and to kind of open my mind up to more of those possibilities. So
have you ever had your chart done?
My mom had my chart done when I was born, 6 months old or something.
Okay, interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because she was into that.
Okay, so you're rebelling.
I've had friends do my chart once or twice.
Nice.
I think they were mostly just using a website that they were typing into.
This is a different thing. Again,
I don't think I've got my chart done in the way you're talking about.
Right, totally. Yeah. For me, it's I feel a profound sense of dedication to honoring the art that is astrology. It's been disrespected, and it's been convoluted. And unfortunately, it hasn't been carried in the highest way in our culture. It was once deeply revered, deeply. And my hope is that we can bring that back and rewrite the cultural paradigm to actually understand that there's something far deeper happening.
Appreciate the value there.
Yeah, we're a part of the rhythms on these larger levels.
Yeah. Well, anything that's connecting you with the larger world, the universe, can be helpful. So
I think so. Yeah. Totally.
That's cool. And you're tying it into this men's work. Is there anything else you want to share about that?
Well, it sounds like a lot of your viewers are from Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we get viewers from all over the world.
Okay, cool. Well, if anybody wants to fly in, then that's great, because we are starting an in-person group, which we've spoken to. I hope that you attend. Yeah, I'd love that. But then, also there is this process called the Mythic Man. And in August, it's looking like probably the third week of August, it'll launch. And it's really a place for people seeking deeper relationship with the masculine, with what it is to be a man right now, on these really deep levels, to have reverence for life in this way, and using myth and astrology and sacred sciences to come into alignment with that. And the idea is to build community all around the world, where we have pods, and there's work that we do each week, and we reconvene as a collective, and we learn together and deepen as men. And I know you've done this work, men's work
I've done several men's groups.
Right.
Just that
so this is like a great big global men's group using myth and astrology to deepen our relationship with our manhood.
Sounds powerful.
Yeah, totally.
The community piece is so important. The connecting, the hearing, the listening, the building a relationship with other men that is on a deeper, more soul-felt level, honestly.
Totally.
Rather than one of competition or one of dismissal or one of fear.
Yeah.
I mean,
and even if there is competitive energy that comes up, it's like, okay, the space can hold that. And how do we actually use this for the betterment of everyone in the space? It's like sometimes men get together and there's an energy, and it's like, instead of it's like,
competition.
Exactly. It's like, hey, let's make each other better. I'm not jealous of you. I celebrate your gifts. I celebrate your successes. You celebrate mine. How can we grow? And so we're rewriting the narrative.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we're born into an uninitiated culture, so here we are initiating each other. Thank God.
We don't get that initiation experience or experiences. I think there should be more than one.
Exactly. Right. Where are our rites of passage? I don't know.
It's a big...
they are.
Big point.
That's why we're here.
And it's so needed in the world today. I mean, do you have any thoughts just to share about our bigger cultural, societal picture with masculinity, where it's been... There's kind of like paradoxes happening. I mean, on the one hand... things like white supremacy and like we just were talking about Donald Trump, from one point of view, it could seem like the negative sides of masculinity are stronger than ever. But from my perspective, I think the bigger picture is that we're entering more and more into a time period and age where women are in leadership, like the feminine qualities are ascendant. Yeah. And and I think that'll be more apparent in the next 10 years.
I couldn't agree more. This has been deeply present for me. Actually, I was just speaking with a woman that I'm deeply close with this morning, and I'm feeling into how personal I want to get in this moment, and I'm very open to being personal. But there's some awareness I'm wanting to have around it. So, I grew up with a mother that was a powerhouse. I didn't have a father that was around in the beginning, and then I had a father for a while that was around, and then that didn't work out too well. I was lucky enough when I was about 12 to have an amazing man enter my life, and that held the structure for me to really lean into my own manhood and have reference for that. I also had a grandfather that was wonderful. But for me, I always witnessed the power of the feminine. If anything, some of my work has been to unexalt the feminine, because it's I've always just had this profound, almost projection, transference on the feminine of just like, wow, and to just accept that, that women are people too, was a process for me, because my mother was very profound.
You put your mother on a pedestal.
Yeah, absolutely. And as many boys probably do, right? Yeah. But for me, men's work has a lot to do with mission, right? Really finding our mission, purpose. Absolutely. I talk a lot about the anchoring and ascending, which is, we can explore more in the men's work. But we're in a time right now where men really need to hold women because women are really birthing a lot. We're healing on a deep level on this planet, and women really have a lot of very ancient codes and stories to share, and just such deep wisdom. So for me, in a male body right now, as a masculine being, I identify with holding a space to protect, and not that women need, I'm speaking on a deep level, to hold a space for women to enter into the space and take the baton and create something so deeply beautiful that come from the ancient wisdom feminine traditions. That's really happening right now on the planet. So yeah, I feel that there's a rewriting of what it is to be a man right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to explore in the program.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel like we really deeply need like a positive vision of being a man. Something that has integrity, strength, positive versions of these masculine qualities. And what we tend to get in the popular culture, like look at The Simpsons that I grew up with.
Me too.
The father figure is the doofus.
Right.
He's an idiot.
Yeah.
He's a joke. And I think that's had a huge impact on our thing. And that same and in some weird way, that same dynamic is happening now. Like the president, is like the father of our country.
Right.
And we all see him as an idiot.
It's because of The Simpsons.
Well, I think The Simpsons are reflecting that deeper.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And, and here we are, though. I mean, this is where the desire comes from us, right? As men coming into our own time, where we're of the generation where here we are, we're in our
30s,
yeah, 30s, right? And we're stepping in, and here we are ready to influence the world while we recognize there are some stories we've inherited that will not suffice.
Right.
We have to go back and rewrite this narrative of men and culture.
Totally.
So what a gift.
Yeah, what a gift.
Contrast clarifies. Clarifies.
Contrast clarifies. Yeah. Totally. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, maybe in the 50s, we had this, like, idea of a man in a certain way, that we've all know the criticisms of that. And now we're for a long time, we've been in this morass of, like, a negative view of masculinity. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of figures that we can look to. Like, we don't have, like, a Martin Luther King right now that we can look to. And
hence the myth. Hence the importance of myth. These ancient, almost timeless tales of life, of triumph.
We can draw on the myth, and birth that in the world.
Yeah, and witness what that is for us. I mean, there's resonance that some of us have with different myths, and some of us don't. I mean, some men really identify with the Zeus archetype. Some do not. Some more it's a Hermes. So there are all these different. And that's just a Greek pantheon.
So it doesn't have to be one Greek. Thing. There's many different.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, well, that's the work. That's what we explore. Well, what is that? And then you sit with that myth and you learn from it, and maybe it changes, and you follow that thread. The whole idea is that you find a thread that takes you deeper, and you trust it. Again, self-organizing systems have an intelligence. We put this in with studying the chart and the mythic man. Find the thread, follow that organic intelligence, witness yourself evolve.
Beautiful.
Totally. It's easy.
I believe these myths are present in some form in our DNA.
Absolutely.
So when we access them,
our stories are written.
It's that embodiment piece again. I mean, it's in our physical structure.
Absolutely. Well, we know. I mean, even belief, right, on an epigenetic level is profound, but eventually, that becomes actually written in the DNA itself. We know this. So we have the 7 generations piece. If we come from a lineage that's had profound grief, well, that trauma is passed down until someone feels it to heal it. You have to feel it to heal it. If your lineage has profound grief and you're the holder of that, part of your path is to feel the grief that you've inherited, to move forward into presence. How can you be present if you're carrying the grief of your great-great-great-grandmother and father?
It's the ancestral healing.
That's where the work comes in the office, too. We want to heal on that level, rewrite the story, connect to the transpersonal.
Yeah, it's so profound. It's so needed.
Totally. In the healing space, it certainly is. It's not going to work anymore. Go get the pill from the doctor. Let's rewrite the stories of our nervous system, of our physiology, and our energetic bodies, right? To be truly present, to truly heal. What is it to heal? I ask everyone that's listening to this. I mean, what does that mean to you, to heal? It's a deep tunnel.
It's a deep question.
Yes.
Yeah, it means something. There's something deeper than just like happiness, like a surface level happiness, obviously.
Yeah.
Something deeper than distraction, being entertained, eating good food, like flying around the world. There's something a lot deeper than that.
Yeah. And, they say for the masculine, it's freedom. And I would ask, what is freedom to you? But there's this sense of just this utter, expansive, limitless freedom, right? And again, I'm not talking about gender. I just want to make that very clear, but the masculine, that yang, is just freedom,
it's like
limitless.
Pure freedom
oh,
that anyone could access.
Wow,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the masculine polarity. And then the feminine polarity, it's more rapture. It's just that absolute radiance, and just to be so taken by life that you dissolve into everything that is. Both have union, but both are different paths.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that. The freedom quality versus the dissolving or realizing the manifest world.
Yeah, and to get in touch with
ascent and descent.
Yeah, absolutely. And are we masculine core or feminine core? It doesn't matter. If you can have a female gender body and be masculine core, or vice versa.
Yeah,
Either way.
The whole gender conversation's gotten so complicated and
political. It's so complicated.
But I appreciate what you're saying. You're saying it's not about what gender you identify with. It's not about even your biological sex.
Yes.
And actually in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddhist Tantra tradition, you visualize yourself as a female Buddha, as a male Buddha, and you do different ones, and
I would think so, because consciousness certainly doesn't have a gender, does it?
Right.
The unified field is not male or female.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my gosh. The non-dual isn't male or female.
I hope not.
Yeah. In my experience, not, but
yeah. So if we can drop into that place, then you can access these different energies without...
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Beautiful. It's been great having you on the podcast.
So sweet, Julian. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope we do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you get back on here.
We have 2 cameras, so yeah. He's got such a beautiful setup here, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have found this podcast valuable, there are many ways in which you can support it. You can share it with friends and on your social media. You can leave us a review on your favorite podcast listening app. And you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/astateofmind. For show notes and more information unique to each episode, visit astateofmindplay.com. And to learn more about my work as a therapist, meditation teacher, and coach, visit julianocean.us. And please don't hesitate to send me a message or email and let me know what you think and contribute to our conversation. Thank you so much for your support. It is listeners like you that make all this so very much worthwhile.